You found the debrief here at ABC News Live. I'm Aaron Katersky. It is day 34 of the government shutdown. We now know there will not be a State of the Union address as previously scheduled, in a traditional setting at least. We're following developments too out of Venezuela, now in the middle of a political crisis. And we're going to take you down to Florida, the latest on a bank shooting that left 5 people dead, right after these headlines.
North Korea's leader is ordering preparations for a second summit with President Trump. North Korean state media says Kim Jong-un is waiting, quote, with patience and in good faith.
Former Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly and Tom Ridge, Michael Chertoff, Janet Napolitano, and Jay Johnson telling the president he's risking losing talented men and women if he continues not funding DHS.
Amazon is testing out new ways to make deliveries. The company is now trying out self-driving robots in one county in Washington state. The 6-wheeled robots, called Scouts, are about the size of a dog, and Amazon says they can navigate around both people and pets.
2 new breeds will debut at next month's Westminster's Dog Show.
And we really can't pronounce either of them, so there they are, right there. Just take a look at those dogs. They include a Frenchie, and here I go, Grand Ba Se Griffon Vendée On.
The other breed is even harder to say. It's called Nederlandse Kokerkanja. You got that?
That's why they pay us the big bucks.
Yeah.
It is day 34 of the government shutdown, and President Trump has signaled he will not be giving his State of the Union address as previously scheduled for Tuesday of next week. In a tweet, he said, as the shutdown was going on, Nancy Pelosi asked me to give the State of the Union address. He agreed, and the tweet goes on that she then changed her mind. And he said, there's nothing quite like the House chamber in which to deliver this address. It's not going on, so we want to get right to the White House with ABC's Karen Travers. President blink here, Karen?
Absolutely. This was a major reversal by President Trump. Aaron, just yesterday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told him she would not be moving forward on the resolution that would allow him to come up and give the State of the Union next week. Lawmakers have to vote to approve that invitation, and that had not happened yet. She said she wasn't going to put that up for a vote. And Aaron, the president, accused her of playing politics. He said that she didn't want to hear the truth. She didn't want the American people to hear the truth. And then just a couple of hours later, the president said it's her prerogative to do that, and he'll give a State of the Union once the government is reopened. And Aaron, it's notable because we were certainly hearing rumblings that the White House was considering an alternative venue, that perhaps the president would take the State of the Union outside of Washington and do it at a campaign-style rally. But last night, he indicated he wants to be in that very big spotlight on the floor of the House chamber. As he said, there's nothing quite like it. So for now, State of the Union is on hold. After the government reopens, I think they'll quickly move to get something on the books.
No immediate sign of the government reopening. Senate takes a couple of votes today, but they're not going anywhere, right?
No, these are all votes essentially to show that they're still deadlocked. You're going to see the Senate vote on 2 different measures. The first is the Republican-backed bill that lays out the proposal the president put on the table last Saturday. This would include $5.7 billion for a border wall and temporary protections, extensions for the young undocumented immigrants known as Dreamers. Democrats are not going to vote for this. The Democrats are putting forward a measure that would reopen the government through February 8th, but not a dollar for the border wall. Aaron, no surprise, Republicans are not going to vote for that. The stalemate will continue.
And in the meantime, federal workers, hundreds of thousands of them, stand to lose another paycheck tomorrow.
Yeah, the paychecks start tomorrow. So over the next couple of days, that 800,000 federal worker group will miss that second paycheck now of the government shutdown. And today, the president's Commerce Secretary was asked about this in an interview with CNBC. And Wilbur Ross, who's one of the wealthiest members of the president's cabinet, says he understands that there are federal workers who are going to food banks to get groceries for their family. And he said he can't understand why they're doing that. He went on to say that these federal workers could take out loans against their back pay that they are guaranteed to get by during this tough time.
ABC's Karen Travers with us from the White House as the government shutdown goes on. We also have learned that Michael Cohen is planning to postpone his congressional testimony. President Trump's former fixer and attorney says he feels threatened by the president and his attorney, Rudy Giuliani. And Cohen's own lawyer, Lanny Davis, appeared on ABC's Good Morning America to talk about those threats that Michael Cohen says he's been feeling.
And the president's allies are saying that the real reason Michael Cohen backed out is fear of tough questions from House Republicans. Your response?
The last thing that Michael Cohen fears are partisan hack questions from Republicans. We expect that. Let me be very clear. The House of Representatives now has an obligation. A resolution of censure when the President of the United States indisputably intimidates and obstructs justice to prevent a witness from testifying is an order. So is a federal criminal investigation of Rudy Giuliani for witness tampering, calling out a man's father-in-law and wife in order to intimidate the witness. My question to Mr. Trump is the same question that Joseph Welch asked Joe McCarthy years ago. Have you no sense of decency, sir, that you attack a man's father-in-law? However, I will say this, make no mistake. Michael Cohen will speak. They will not thwart this truth coming out.
Lanny Davis on ABC's Good Morning America. Let's bring in our justice reporter, ABC's Jack Date, with us from Washington. These threats that Lanny Davis has talked about the president and Rudy Giuliani delivering to Michael Cohen, they haven't been overt. They've been more tacit, mainly about Michael Cohen's father-in-law. What are they about, Jack?
Well, you know, the president said a lot of things about Cohen's father-in-law, invoking his family, and Cohen's suggesting that that's a form of intimidation or a threat, and that's preventing him from being able to go before the House in public and testify. So, you know, when Lanny Davis says, you know, invokes that McCarthy-era quote of "Have you no decency?" You know, where we get into the gray area is that, you know, being indecent isn't against the law, and we've seen it over and over in politics in this town as of late, all kinds of indecency. So, but what Lanny Davis seems to be asking for is for an investigation into Rudy Giuliani for basically witness intimidation and a censure by the House of President Trump for a similar allegation. So it remains to be seen whether the House will act, but the House Chairman Elijah Cummings of the House Oversight Committee, he's determined to get his testimony.
Yeah, this was supposed to be something of an opening showpiece for Democrats to say there's a new era of government oversight in Washington. So this is a real blow to the Democrats.
Well, potentially, but again, if this plays out in a manner where they're able to take some sort of action, maybe make a referral to the Justice Department or put something out there that will make Mr. Cohen more comfortable about testifying, they may get what they want in the end, which is him in a hearing room talking about his 10 years as Donald Trump's attorney.
ABC's Jack Date with us from Washington as Michael Cohen prepares perhaps for some form of congressional testimony. You heard his attorney, Lanny Davis, said that he would do it at some point. We're going to move next to Venezuela, which is now in the middle of a political crisis of its own. Look at the sea of demonstrators that have come out after the leader of the National Assembly effectively installed himself as the new president of the country. Cody Weddle is on the ground for us in Caracas. Cody, these scenes of protest are simply incredible.
They were incredible, impressive yesterday. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, attending this swearing-in ceremony for Juan Guaido, the president of the country's National Assembly. And when he raised his right hand, it's a moment that so many people have been calling for many weeks here. So he raised his right hand. He said, "I assume the presidency of this country," and the crowd went ecstatic. For the first time here in so many years, there's hope that change might be coming to this country thanks to the leadership of Juan Guaido and this move, and moves from other countries, other governments, to recognize Juan Guaido as the president and not Nicolas Maduro.
Maduro was just sworn in for another term a couple of weeks ago. How has the dynamic shifted?
Well, it has shifted because now the opposition has momentum again. It has really been remarkable over the past few weeks. The opposition went from disorganized, fractured all of last year to now organized and focused on these fresh protests and focused on this act of swearing in Juan Guaido. We've seen the government sort of reacting to what the opposition does. So the opposition was holding these masked, these large town hall events around the country. Then the government started holding the town hall events. Yesterday, the opposition held protests, as we were seeing. Yesterday, the government called protests as well to show support, to show that Maduro still has support. So really, the opposition has Maduro on his heels for the first time in a very long time.
On his heels, maybe, Cody, but is Maduro going to go quietly?
Absolutely not, and he made that clear last night when he ordered the U.S. Embassy here to remove diplomatic staff within 72 hours. It's still not clear whether the State Department will comply with that because, again, the United States is recognizing Juan Guaido as the interim official president here. Juan Guaido says he wants the State Department's diplomats to stay here. So still comes some confusion as to whether State Department officials will be evacuated from the country. But Maduro also still has the backing of the armed forces here. As they like to say here, he still has the guns, at least the military members who are the high-ranking military members, because they still live very comfortable lives. Of course, for the lower ranks, they're highly affected by the humanitarian crisis. So it will be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. The lower levels of the military affected by the crisis, the higher levels still very much in a comfortable position.
Cody, if Maduro has the guns, as you put it, does Guaido have the people, at least judging from the size of the demonstrations?
Absolutely, and he showed that yesterday with the size of that demonstration, as you said. I've seen demonstrations here for the 5 years I've been here, and I'm not sure I've seen that amount of people in the streets, and their ability to mobilize that amount of people was really remarkable, and just the emotion that people had. I saw people crying when he raised his right hand and was sworn in as president, and when they started singing the national anthem. So hope is really back for people who oppose the government, which polls show it's most of the country. Only 20% of Venezuelans still support Maduro.
Cody, we appreciate your reporting on the ground there in Caracas. Cody Weddle there in Venezuela. And I want to turn next to Eli Lopez of the Washington Post to talk more about this political crisis. We hear Cody describing the hope of many Venezuelan people now, but Guaido is not democratically elected. Can this just happen?
Well, Guaido was elected to Parliament, to Congress, and of course then he was sworn in as president of the National Assembly. For the opposition, the National Assembly holds legitimate power. They were a body that was able to win an overwhelming majority back in 2015, and after that, Maduro proceeded to sort of strip them out of all their powers, legislative powers, oversight powers over all the other branches of government. But he has legitimacy because his body of government was the last one that we saw that was elected freely and fairly.
Sounds like a Scott Walker move in Wisconsin.
Very much so, and actually compared to that on Twitter, Maduro has consistently denied the opposition all the democratic avenues to exert oversight over his power. He wants a rubber stamp assembly, which he created out of thin air. After he had an election back in May, that's why he was sworn in. But that election was boycotted by the opposition because the conditions were not there. People that were not allowed to run. There were people who were persecuted, put in jail, or simply banned from holding office. And basically, what the National Assembly says is we are the officially elected body of the majority of the people. We hold legitimacy all across the country because our representatives, represent most of the country. And Maduro has been now reinaugurated under false pretenses.
We saw as soon as Guaido took his oath of office, the United States moved very quickly, along with a number of other countries, to recognize the legitimacy of his government. The U.S. doesn't have a great track record in dealing with Latin America. Is this helpful or potentially hurtful?
Well, certainly they have to move very, very cautiously and carefully. I feel that the United States, as you rightly point out, cannot be seen as manipulating events on the ground. I feel Guaido has made a direct plea, and he actually did on an op-ed that he wrote for us last week, to the international community to lend him his support and further isolate Maduro. Of course, the United States is part of that international support, but so is Canada, so is France, and countries from all around the region. And this is why this is unprecedented. We have countries around the region who have rallied around Guaido to denounce Maduro and denounce his abuses, to not recognize him, including the countries of Brazil and Colombia and Peru, Argentina, so Chile. So we have a united front in Latin America, and the United States is part of that mix.
I wanted to ask you one thing, too, about U.S. diplomats, because as Cody Weddle was telling us on the ground, Maduro ordered American diplomats out. Guaido said they should stay. We know the United States does not recognize Maduro's order, but this does put them in a bit of peril should Maduro move the military in.
Well, certainly. The president, one of high-ranking Chavista officials, Maduro's right hand, Diosdado Cabello, threatened with cutting their electricity and their water and gas to the residencies of the diplomats. Of course, most Venezuelans already suffer from shortages of water and gas and electricity. I think that they will not, hopefully, they will not attack or harm diplomats. I feel like it will be a very foolish move. But of course, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. We don't know exactly what the U.S.'s official recognition of Guaido's government means, and it has a lot of implications, practical implications.
Well, Eli, we appreciate you helping us understand the situation that's unfolding there. Eli Lopez of the Washington Post. And we're going to return to this country now and take you to Florida, because 5 people were shot and killed in a bank right in the middle of the state between Tampa and Orlando. ABC's Tom Llamas is on the ground in that part of the state where there was a court appearance for the suspect, a 21-year-old who is said to have opened fire, shot and killed 5 people. Tom.
Just behind me, you can see where the SWAT team moved in. They actually had to smash through the front doors there because the shooter had barricaded himself inside of the SunTrust Bank here in Sebring, Florida. Now, police say it was the alleged gunman who called 911 telling them, "I have shot 5 people." Eyewitnesses say when they came to the bank, they found the front doors locked, and when they looked inside, they could see the victims on the floor, and then they heard the gunshots. Now, again, it was the SWAT team that moved in. They pulled out the shooter, the alleged shooter, 21-year-old Zephan Zaver. He was wearing a T-shirt, shorts, and sneakers. So far, a motive is unknown, and police have not released the names of any of the victims. Florida dealing with yet another mass shooting as we approach the 1-year anniversary of the Parkland shooting, where 17 people lost their lives. A local headline this morning summing up both those shootings: senseless.
ABC's Tom Llamas in Sebring, Florida, after that bank shooting. In North Carolina, there is a missing 3-year-old and an all-out effort to try and find this toddler. ABC's Steve Osinsami on the ground there for us.
Hey, Aaron, the rain is coming down really hard right now in Ernle, North Carolina, as authorities continue their search for 3-year-old Casey Hathaway. Volunteers from the Marines are here helping in the search. The FBI is here, and there are literally hundreds of neighbors who are assisting in the search. The sheriff describes this as very rugged terrain. This is a very rural area. There are swamps and sinkholes in the search area where they're looking for this 3-year-old. The 3-year-old disappeared on Tuesday afternoon. He was in the backyard, his grandmother's backyard, with 2 other children who were relatives, and the grandmother says that when the 2 other children came back in, the boy disappeared. Authorities are calling this a missing persons case, but they say it's entirely possible. They're not ruling out the possibility that he was kidnapped. They do tell us that the family is cooperating in this investigation. The conditions are awful. Right now, there's this heavy rain, but on Tuesday, temperatures were below freezing. Still looking for this little boy. Aaron?
ABC's Steve Osinsami in North Carolina on that hunt for this missing 3-year-old with suboptimal conditions for sure. And let's get the latest on the weather now from ABC's Ginger Z.
Hey, Aaron, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and start with some of the weather headlines that are a lot warmer and definitely wetter than we have been seeing, but that's only for about 24 hours. Let me take you through it. The pictures coming out of Ohio. This is East Lake, Ohio, where there were water rescues. There are actually evacuations ongoing in Vermilion, Ohio, where an ice jam forced some flash flooding and more water rescues there. So that's going on to the north. A lot of rain to the south. Birmingham, Alabama had flash flooding, 1 to 2 inch per hour rainfall rates. So when it comes down that fast, you can easily flood the places that flood so easily. Checking out the whole cold front across the east, there have actually been severe storm warnings and tornado warnings this morning in Florida, so there's a lot of oomph to the southern part of it, and there's a lot of oomph that's going to end up just dropping a lot of rain. That's why we've got flood watches all the way from Virginia through Maryland into Philadelphia up to Portland, Maine, speaking of. And as this front moves through, it's just going to be an almost all-day rain on our Thursday here. Definitely going to impact travel. I'm concerned because I've got a flight. A lot of people probably feeling that way. We will dry out by Friday, but with that is going to come a lot colder air. Check that out. That cold blast already settled in, so it already feels like 8 this morning in Des Moines or 6 below in Green Bay. But watch what happens when you get a little touch of polar air. It'll feel like 20 below in Chicago by Friday morning. 23 below in Des Moines, 41 below in Fargo. Oh, you want to go more? You want to go a little colder? Even colder there by the end of the weekend. So it's not like it's going anywhere. We'll end up feeling like the teens here along much of the East Coast. Aaron?
ABC's Ginger Z, our thanks to you. No thanks for Fargo. Check out the briefing room a little later on here at ABC News Live, 3:30 Eastern Time. World News Prime at 8 o'clock tonight Eastern Time. And you can download the ABC News app for more on all of our top stories that we're following today. I'm Aaron Katersky in New York. Thanks for watching ABC News Live.